Hello, welcome to Just Bricks, brought to you by Kick It Forward and Sporting News Australia. Alongside me, a very special now co-host, kind of, Damian Martin. How you going?
I'll take it, but what's doing on your head there? I love it. Chippies forever.
Chippies forever. We've got a new sponsor, Chicken Treat, this week. So it's our first sponsor.
Congratulations.
Try not to knock the merch before we
I love
actually
it.
get into it.
I just don't see you in a hat all that often, and I'm a sucker for chips, so I thought you were just messing with me.
I haven't got a hat head, unfortunately. I'm really sorry. But yeah, Chippies Forever. They got some good merch, actually. They have some good burgers too, which we'll get into later in the program. A lot of sport going on right now, a lot of basketball. What have you been enjoying? What have you been up to?
I love this time of year because March Madness for me and finals, NBL, WNBL is the best time of the year. I'd take that over NBA finals because with March Madness, all the collegiate tournaments taking place, all the conferences, you're trying to get your automatic bid. Some conferences are strongest and then the 2 or 3 teams will get to the NCAA tourney, and just the passion every single possession. That's what I want to see, and you rarely do in the NBA, but in college you do. In the NBL, WNBL, you certainly do. And an incredible final series in the WNBL. Absolutely heartbreaking for the Perth Lynx. Had a chance to take the lead in the dying seconds of Game 2 here in Perth. Would have been their first championship in, 20 or 30 years. They had some of the old former players there in the stands. Heartbreak. You go over to Melbourne, and if you were going to lose to anyone, I think you want it to be to Lauren Jackson. Like it's a bitter pill to swallow when you lose a grand final, but deep down, I think that even the Lynx players probably grew up idolising the GOAT, and when they saw her go up to get her 6th WNBL championship, they're like, okay, there's worse people to have lost to.
It is hard to argue with Lauren Jackson and what a legacy she leaves behind. Firstly, the Lynx though, they literally came as close as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. Felt so bad for Annalie Malley. Like, she does so much for that team. The team's so tight. They hit the form at the right time under Petrick, and then end of the season, you just can't. And it's, what about for you when you have those losses when you're in a series, and in your head, we probably should have won it. The ball rolls a different way. The luck of basketball. How hard is it to back that up and go play after a big loss?
The high of winning a championship doesn't actually stick with you as long as the low of losing one does. So when you win, it's all about going out, celebrating. It's awesome. And then after about 4 or 5 days, it dwindles and you're like, oh, okay, what's next? Okay, I might try and win another. That's 4 or 5 days. When you lose, you want to get back out on court the next day. You can't sleep that night. You're frustrated. It's just overwhelming, the emotions. And so I dare say every single one of those Lynx players have had an incredible season. They should be celebrating what was special, but they're probably back on court today or tomorrow because they don't want to replicate how it finished this year. But having a taste, getting so close, they'll do whatever it takes now to try and go that one step further and hold up the trophy.
Lauren Jackson not playing the Olympics. Are you annoyed by that? Would you love to see her there?
The whole country wants to see her playing. And even if she was literally the 12th player on that bench, she'd have a role that she'll do better than anyone else with her leadership, with the aura that she brings. And there's no way if you take her, she's not working her way into that rotation. What we saw at the World Cup was amazing. What we saw in the semi-finals when she dropped, 28 points to get the Southside Flyers across the line was amazing. And I think if she did put her hand up, go to another Olympics, she would help that team win another medal.
We just hit on some NBA before going back to the NBL finals and NCAA prospects we're about to see. Jock Landale, he's picked up he's kind of gone ahead of a lot of people now. He's scoring about 10 points per game in his last 5 outings in sort of double-digit minutes now after being kind of on the outer for a lot of the season. What have you seen from him? What do you put it down to?
Look, a lot of it's just come down to, does the coach think you're going to fit a certain role? And he does, because he's so consistent. He's going to play, I critiqued how I don't necessarily always enjoy the NBA because it doesn't seem like every possession matters. Whereas Jock gives his all every single possession. And maybe being in and out a little bit made him realise, if I want to make the most of this opportunity, I've got to make sure that the minutes I get given are quality minutes. And it's hard to say that when he's on the court, they're not a better team. It's hard not to say they aren't, because they are. He makes the superstars be able to shine in what their strengths are, because he'll do all the 1%ers, set great screens, go after every rebound, run the lanes really hard. And that goes noticed by coaches, and then inevitably they don't have an excuse not to play him. And he's been rewarded with quality minutes that he's earned.
I saw Bogut talking about the benefit of being an informed player, like in the NBL where you're actually playing strong minutes. Does this impact anything for the Boomers, do you think? Whether or not they still look at Magnay, who's been playing so well in the NBL? Because Landale and Reith, it's a pretty strong position to be in now compared to the World Cup, where Landale went down with an injury, and you have Reith still finding his feet, playing well, but like it probably doesn't have the same confidence now going into Olympics, where he's one of the most successful guys in an NBA team that year.
Yeah, so Duop Reith, he'll start. You'll have Landale start.
Oh, you think he'll start?
Yeah, I think he'll still start. I mean, he dropped, 28 points in one game, got rewarded with a contract with Portland Trail Blazers instead of it being a two-way. So he'd be full of confidence. Gets back to Perth soon. He'll get back on court straight away. So I think that Duop Reith, Jock Landale will be starting big man combination. Jock not playing at the World Cup significantly hurt the team. I thought they were a little undersized, but Magnay, in my opinion, should be one of the first names called into the squad.
Yeah, okay.
And then once he's in that squad, he's got to prove that what we've seen in the NBL, he can do that alongside the likes of those two names I mentioned before, but also Nick Kay, Xavier Cooks, two players who have been doing really well in Japan and are in form in the leagues that they've been playing in. So I would have him in the mix. And then I'd bring in some of the youngsters, so that next generation, the Harry Wessels currently at St. Mary's, obviously Rocco Zakarski over there with Brisbane. And then if you look at those 6-8 quality Australian big men, maybe only 4 or 5 are legitimately putting their hand up for selection for this Olympic campaign. But the sooner you ingrain them in that culture, the better it is for the program moving forward.
That's a really good point. I think, you forget about that. They're planning not for this tournament. They're planning for the next 3 tournaments sort of thing. Especially you think Gorgon's going to be around in that role at least for a bit of time now. I had one more thing. So Reith, in COVID, this is a random story, but in COVID, I remember Keanu Pinder and Reith, we were back in Perth, and we were allowed to go outside. We were allowed to play basketball and stuff, but none of the stadiums were open.
Yep.
So we were playing 3-on-3 in West Perth at Donny Tarko, and I'd interviewed Reith for the West Australian, and I was still playing a bit, but a bunch of our NBL 1 guys were going down to play, and sort of said, "Oh, by the way, mate, we play on Tuesdays, and Thursdays, just to keep sane." He's like, "Yeah, I might come down," and he rocked up. And didn't just rock up.
He came to play.
Mate, it was like him and Ben Purser, who's a mutual friend of ours, just going at each other, but in a good way. I think Pinder ended up being injured or something, but Reith was he was currently signed to a Lithuanian EuroLeague side. I think it was Red Star or something, and he's playing at West Perth in on this uneven floor and banging, dropping his shoulder, and he ended up winning. He played really well, and this is just before he sort of joined Illawarra.
So you're the reason. You're the reason.
I don't want to take
NBA.
credit.
That's where we're going with this.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was trying to say. No. But I just always think of that.
He's the nicest guy. He's so down to earth. But his story in itself is incredible because he wasn't just handed everything. He's had to earn it. And even the setbacks, the different leagues around the world he's had to play in. And then I mentioned Harry Wessels and Nick Kay before. Right before the World Cup, those 3 were working out every single day over at Bendat.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I went down just to watch one day, and you've got 3 completely different styles of play, but Duop's just a flat-out scorer, just an attacking machine, whether it's 3-pointers off the dribble, post plays. And I remember just walking away from the training session going, wow, Reith's taking his game to another level. And then with Landale getting injured, opportunity arose at the World Cup, and the rest is history. Now he's an NBA player, but I love Duop, big fan of his, and he'll do well at the next Olympics.
I'm excited to see more people be introduced to him at the Olympics, because it's going to be such a popular Olympics too, as Brisbane almost gets wiped out as well in Australia. Yeah. The NCAA March Madness is coming up. We've spoken a lot about Johnny Furphy. Proctor is another big name. But I wanted to talk about Rain Smith in particular. Yep. Is he with Charleston right now? He's a junior right now. Absolute lights out shooter from a town of about 20,000 in northern Tasmania. He was picked up in the under-18 Nationals to go to the AAS because he had a 40-point game alongside Taron Armstrong, who's now at the Cairns Taipans, and they sort of found him. And he's really come into his own at a sort of a smaller school. What do you know about him, especially in the sort of agency world?
Well, it's nice to finally see a left-handed guard who can shoot the 3. So I'm so jealous of how he can shoot the rock. And the thing that Rain has done with himself is put himself in a position where every single NBL club would sign him in a heartbeat. I've got no doubt about that. But because of the success he's had at Charleston, he can go back and leave a legacy where he'll become the greatest three-point shooter of all time, potentially lead the school in all-time scoring. Just all of these things that, you mentioned Jock Landale, Paddy Mills, Matthew Dellavedova, Daniel Kickett. They've all got their jersey retired at St. Mary's Gales, and it means the world to them. And I look at Rain, I'm like, well, you can come back and sure, he could turn pro right now, or go back to Charleston, become the greatest guard of all time that university's ever seen. Remember, they're winning their conference. He was all-conference MVP. So he can play, but very few players get to leave a legacy that'll never be forgotten, and he's in that position. So great kid, down to earth, has never forgotten his upbringing. He'll be able to dominate in the NBL one day. He'll be one of the best shooters. Chris Golding, I've got a question for you later about Golding, but when we talk finals, but Rain could go on to have a prolific career in the NBL. He's more than just a 3-and-D. He can do a bit of everything. So love the kid, but in a way, I'm actually kind of hoping he goes back to university because he could just smash every record that school's ever seen.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch. And some of the numbers of threes he's putting up, he had a 23 attempt game the other day and things like that. And he's making them too, which is always good.
I've got a quick story. So it wasn't quite 23, but I remember we played the Kings.
Yeah.
And it must have been in the grand finals, semis, whatever it was. And then we landed back in Perth. We won. And I happened to hit a three-pointer in the fourth quarter. And as we landed, the first question that Craig O'Donoghue, the journo at the West Australian, asked me was like, hey, mate, how does it feel you hit your first three in 16 attempts? So well, I'd been keeping count. I didn't realise how high I'd been creeping up. So that was across multiple games. Rain did it, in the one. But yeah, when it comes to that, I was like, oh, yeah, I did have
Mate, good culture. It's because no one was even keeping track. They just want you to score.
I was probably just me that wasn't keeping track.
Sure.
Maybe Trev was thinking, pass it, what are you doing?
It says don't shoot on the board.
Yeah, exactly.
You're too happy. Let's go to the NBL finals quickly. Melbourne and Jack Jumpers play tonight. Unbelievable work by the Jack Jumpers to make another NBL finals series. It seems like Scott Roth is really brewing something amazing down there. Before we get to Melbourne, Jack McVeigh, he plays like he's at a YMCA. He plays like he's down at the park with me and Dwop. And but he's doing 1 foot fadeaways. He's finding people for the drop-off pass. He's hitting threes. This is in the semi-final series. How do they unlock him and the rest of the team in this? Because he's been so effective.
The strength of Tassie is they play as a team. They get it to their hot guy and they're willing to make the open pass to give up a good shot for a great. The strength of Melbourne is they actually stopped some of the ball reversal. They played the on-ball screens differently to how the Wildcats did. So while the Wildcats wanted to clog the key and make Tassie score from the outside or congest it if Milton Doyle went off the dribble, if Jordan Crawford went off the dribble, Tassie were allowed to move it from east to west and get it to the players they wanted in the spots their players wanted to get it in. And it worked in game one for Perth, for the half of game two it did. In game three, Tassie were just free flowing and too good with their execution. So they've got to be able to execute. So whether that means setting better screens, the timing of the cuts is there, because when they get rotation and then eventually it finds its way into the hands of Jack, he's that good of a shooter that he either knocks down the open one or on a late closeout or a long closeout, he can go off the dribble. But he's not necessarily the Bryce Cotton or the Jordan Crawford or the Milton Doyle who get him in a pick and roll situation or an ISO situation, they'll still go and create.
Yeah.
It's more off movement and he usually makes the right decision, but they've got to set good screens, run plays for him, not just necessarily wait for it to unfold within the system, because the scouting report of Melbourne is as good as it gets and they're trying to take away options A and B, but does Tassie have option C that involves McVeigh getting the ball?
What have you made of Melbourne? You said you had a question about Golding before.
Well, my question is not necessarily about the finals. It's about his season.
Okay.
So I saw something come out where I want to say he's into 7th or 8th for most threes made during a season in the NBL, but he's the only player on that list during the 40-minute era. So should we be treating his performances right now? He's probably about 20 or 30 behind. I think Shane Hill, Andrew Gaze are on the list a couple of times. John Reilly's on the list a couple of times. Rucker's on there as well. Copes is on there. But if he used to continue to make 2 or 3 a game, he could actually finish on top of that list in the 40-minute era. Are we giving him the respect, one, of what he's achieved behind the arc this season, and 2, does he become an automatic selection for Paris because he can spread the floor. Josh Giddey's not renowned for being a knockdown three-point shooter. Some of the other players they take aren't necessarily 40+% shooters. Does Golden become not just a lock for that team, but also in the rotation just to spread the floor?
Well, I think that was one of the big takeaways from the world champs was like we weren't shooting well. We had all these guys that were great wing defenders, great creators, but we couldn't shoot. And I thought that that was one of the guys that could play more. Potentially he's an automatic. I think he's comfortable in Paris. He played in Paris for a bit as well. I know that means absolutely nothing. But as far as the question about the era, I always find it interesting that Shane Hill and Andrew Gaze, they were kind of ahead of the curve of world basketball. Like they were shooting so many threes, like 10 threes a game. And then it was only Golding who sort of mirrors those guys and goes beyond them. Yeah, I think I don't think there's a better shooter right now. He's still playing at the peak of his powers. He's playing alongside these guys. And if he's going to relinquish any of the pressure on a guy like Josh Giddey, then he kind of needs to be there, especially if like the other, if Mills and Ingles aren't at their best.
Yeah, they can't play 30 minutes each.
Yeah. What about you? Like, do you think?
Yeah, I'd take him. Yeah, I'd take him because of the balance he offers. Just another look, prolific scorer, will back himself, play with confidence, can come off the bench and not be afraid to let it fly. But anyway, to go back to your question, there is a look in Dellavedova's eyes. I honestly don't know what Tassie can do, because I think Delhi will do even more. And I'm not just saying with ball in hand, he's just going to go and get it done himself. But his IQ is ridiculous. Getting Joe Lawella-Kuhl, the way he gets him involved is amazing. The way he can call plays to make sure Goulden gets the ball at the right times. And if there's a loose ball, I don't know who thinks they can win it ahead of Delhi. And he's almost got that fear factor that he's going for it regardless, even if it means he's going to potentially break his leg, his arm, whatever it's, or the opposition's leg or back, and just by accident, but just he's focused on that boy. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. And sometimes you can just ride on the coattails of someone who's so determined, combine that with high basketball IQ and skill. And I think that's the biggest dilemma that Tassie have, is how do you take out the Delhi factor? And that's not the points on the board, which he's still contributing to. It's just the amount of time he's on the court, Melbourne are going to be better. And then you got him on the court, you got the best defensive player in the league alongside him. You got some great scorers. Luke Travers is doing his thing. They're just a very well-balanced team, but at a very high level, all in form and all doing what it takes to win a championship.
The Travers decision now in hindsight seems kind of brilliant of the young player to go there and also learn from guys like Delhi as well. Like imagine being alongside him as well in this period where he's got the biggest chip on his shoulder ever. Is he a lock for you for the Boomers then as well? Like, I'd
love to see him there. Yeah. He's deserving of the camp because I think that because he's so smart, he'll bring out the best in whoever else is alongside him. It's just a case of, where does Gorgon see him fit in? Because he's got to be out on the court to be able to run those plays to make his teammates better. But if Gorge deep down doesn't think there's 10 minutes a game that he's going to be able to get Delhi involved, then unfortunately I don't think he gets selected. If I was the coach, I would be saying, I'll find 10 for Delhi, because he does things that don't show up in the box score. He does things to his teammates that help them play better.
And he
wins games. So look, Gorge, Nelly, the whole coaching staff, they're much smarter than I am. And I'm biased. I absolutely love Delhi. So I'd love to see him there. It's just that he's playing in one of the toughest positions for this team selection.
We're going to dive into some hot takes from around the basketball world in a new segment, Damien. Is that all right?
I would love to. Okay,
this is Hot Takes brought to you by Chicken Treat to celebrate their new Frank's Red Hot Thick Sauce range. It's actually pretty delicious. Anyway, this is the burger.
Am I allowed to eat these?
Yeah, you can eat them. Chips are great. Renowned chips. Burger's great too, as well. Anyway, so my hot take. So Wembanyama in the NBA. He's a rookie. He's playing so well. He's really finding his feet a bit more. But defensively, he's dominant.
Yes.
People are saying he should be the defensive player of the year in a very bad team, though. What do you think? Is there merit in him being the defensive player of the year despite having such a bad losing record?
Yeah, there is. And I know that on social media, he went out publicly and said, go Bear, if he gets it, that's fine. Best of luck to him. He deserves it. I'm looking at the games now. I haven't seen every single game he's played, nor have I watched every single NBA game, but I do watch a fair chunk of it. What he can do, I've never seen at the defensive end. And I read a statistic the other day that he already has more career blocks than close to 82% of the rest of the league currently. Rest of the players in the league currently. It's just absolutely amazing. And he's the first player ever in the NBA with 200 plus blocks, 100 plus steals, I think it is, 75 plus, 200 blocks, 100 plus three. It's something ridiculous. just go with me on this.
He's got a lot of them.
We might have to come up with a fact check here, but it's just amazing what he's doing in his rookie season. And so if he get named DPOY, he's deserving of it because even though they're getting smashed at times, he's going out there and still contending for shots, still trying to get in the stance, and he moves his feet very well for someone at his size. So he doesn't mind if he gets switched onto a guard, and he usually does a pretty good job of contesting or blocking that shot as well. Just
on the back of that, before we get to the next hot take, how much do you value blocks in basketball and the NBA? Because there's a lot of analytics guys say that blocks are overrated. Like the reality is, with a guy like him who creates so much fear around the bucket, you being a defensive guy that would be partnered with big, do you put a lot of emphasis in blocks?
Well, it's not necessarily the blocks. Take away Victor because he's kind of the exception to the rule. Because rarely do you get many block shots. You look at a box score, it's probably the lowest number of all the categories. So what you want to do is disrupt rhythm, disrupt timing, force the opposition to taking a long contested two. That was always my goal. A shot that, after practice, you normally practice from 7 different spots around the three-point line. How do you make them shoot it from one of those slot spots that they don't necessarily grab a ball and shoot from?
Yeah.
Ideally, it's a long two instead of a 3 or something in the keyway. So that was always my goal. If I had to send it to a big, either an on-ball situation or a flat-out shooter, so you had to guard closer, you wanted to send it to the big, knowing that one, they'd cover at the right time, so you had time to take away the drop-off pass or the alley-oop to their big man, and they were just going to disrupt the way they had to naturally shoot. So add more arc to it, or maybe shoot a step back or whatever it was. But with Victor Wembanyama, it's not just about contesting or trying to change the way they shoot it. He can just get out there and block it. And it's amazing because you're seeing guards give up layups or even give up floaters because even if they try and shoot it that little bit higher, that extra second it takes to get that little bit higher, he's already up there and blocking it. So they're actually turning down shots, which is something that you rarely see. And there's not many players in the history of the game that make players turn down shots, not just change them.
In a minute, how realistic are Oklahoma's championship chances?
No, they're not going to win it.
Oh, really?
Well,
okay, give me a bit longer than nah. Okay.
I thought I went too long on the first. I'll have them making it to the conference semis.
Conference semis?
Yeah.
And then just learning this year and potentially not...
In years to come, I think they can potentially have 3 first-rounders next year.
Oh,
depending on what they do with their current roster, I think they're going to win a championship or 2 within the next 5 years. I just don't think it's going to be this year. They're all coming into their prime. Shea's incredible. Giddy's playing good minutes. They've got enough talent to go far into conference play. But in the end, I think they're another year, maybe 2 seasons away from holding up the trophy at the end.
That's a good one. Good work, good length. That's great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Xavier Cooks, he's decided to come back to the NBL, to the Sydney Kings, where he won 2 championships. Good decision by him. Obviously, he didn't have much of a decision. Does he win the MVP? Do you think guaranteed? Is he the favourite now? Let me read it that one. Sorry, Benyam. Xavier Cooks is back in the NBL. Is he the automatic MVP favourite?
He'll come in top 3.
Top 3.
We're always going to have Bryce Cotton.
Yep.
And then depending on who some of the new imports are they bring back, I dare say there'll be a new import they put in there, Bryce and Xavier.
And do we ever see him back in the NBA?
No, that was probably his best shot. I dare say he's got an NBA out clause. He's got plenty of skill, his athleticism, his ability to block shots. His NBA, it's world class. But I think now what we saw him do in Japan has warranted, a big contract. I've been told it's been the biggest contract of all time for a player in the NBL. Love what the Kings are doing. They've gone out there. He can be a marquee player, so you got to remember not all of that is on the salary cap. And, they won 2 with him at the helm. He won an MVP. He's coming back, and the Kings are putting together a hell of a team.
Decent coach too now.
Brian Gorgon, the GOAT, is back. So Sydney Kings, look at, you asked about favourites going into next year. Regardless of whether Melbourne or Tassie win it this season, I dare say the Kings start as favourites.
Damian, thanks so much. And thanks to Chicken Treat for jumping on board Just Bricks. For the next couple of months, check out their new range, Frank's Red Hot Sauce, Thick Sauce range, next time you can.
Cheers, mate.
It's good hats.
Love it.
Remember to review and subscribe. And thanks so much for another episode of Just Bricks, brought to you by Kicker Forward and Sporting News.